Welcome to Quest Club for April 1st, 2022. Happy April Fool's Day. I can assure you that there will be no ill-fated attempts at humor in my remarks today. To begin our meeting, our invocation today will be delivered by Quester Jim Grice.
When Dana called me and said, "Hey, will you do the invocation on April 1st?" I had no idea what I was going to say, what it would be, and I was playing my guitar for my wife one night, and this came into my head. It's an old song, probably my favorite singer-songwriter of the 70s. His name's Dan Fogelberg, if any of you remember him. He passed away, sadly, about 15 years ago. If I break up a little bit, I probably will. I can already feel it. This really speaks to me about life, about the journey we're all on, our separate journeys. And the song is called Along the Road. Joy at the start, fear in the journey, joy in the coming home. A part of the heart gets lost in the learning somewhere along the road. Along the road, your path may wander. A pilgrim's faith may fail. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Darkness obscures the trail. Cursing the quest, courting disaster, measureless nights forebode. Moments of rest, glimpses of laughter are treasured along the road. Along the road, your steps may stumble, your thoughts may start to stray. But through it all, a heart held humble levels and lights your way.
Today's paper is presented by Brad Stiles. Brad is a native of Fort Wayne, born and raised here. After graduating from Snyder High School, Brad left Fort Wayne, wisely, for Purdue University in West Lafayette. Upon graduating from Purdue, Brad pursued a commission in the United States Marine Corps. He served in the Marines from 1990 through 1995 and participated in 2 deployments, once to Somalia, followed by a tour in Kuwait. After serving with the Marines, Brad pursued a career in manufacturing operations and made home in Pennsylvania for several years, and then briefly in Wisconsin. It was while living in Wisconsin that Brad decided to change careers and return to Fort Wayne. Today, Brad is an investment advisor helping clients protect their assets and save and invest wisely for retirement. His loyalty and commitment to his clients is demonstrated by taking the time to get to know them both as individuals and as friends. He often makes house calls to meet with his clients and plan around their kitchen table, understanding that life is often more complicated than we think, and he believes in helping one another. He lives by the philosophy expressed in this quote by John F. Kennedy: "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." In addition to his securities insurance licenses, Brad is a chartered retirement planning counselor and has received specific training to assist retirees and pre-retirees work towards a comfortable retirement by helping them avoid the most common financial mistakes. He especially enjoys introducing clients to socially responsible investing, or SRI. SRI is based on the principle of investing in well-managed companies that act responsibly towards shareholders, communities, employees, consumers, and the environment. Brad believes it's gratifying for clients to know that their investments are consistent with their personal values. Brad enjoys spending time with family and friends. He likes to think he is a devoted son and uncle. He is committed to community service and enjoys volunteering with big brothers, big sisters. In his spare time, he enjoys working out and reading. Brad has been a member of Quest Club since 2015. Please join me in welcoming Brad Stiles.
Today's topic is Stoicism for current times. It's a topic that I had maybe vague familiarity with, through some readings of Marcus Aurelius and just sort of the quips and motivational posters that you see hanging around office spaces sometimes. But it was very interesting for me to dig a little deeper and learn more about Marcus Aurelius, who I relied deeply on for this paper, and as well as some of the other ancient Stoics. So with that, I will get started. We're living in interesting times We're living at a time of wars and rumors of wars and famines and pandemics and natural disasters. We're witnessing a time when democracy seems to be under assault. We are living in an era where the repetition of information and misinformation, facts and alternative facts, not only provide us with a different perspective, but create different realities. We are hyper-polarized and hypersensitive and 100% convinced that we are right. Reason and considered judgment and the virtue of patience seem to be old-fashioned and obsolete in today's fast-paced, go-go world where all that is required is 2 thumbs and an internet connection, and you too can become famous. The next sensation trending worldwide, a reality TV star. Excuse me. Interesting times. Yes, I'm here to tell you that all is lost. The hour has come and the end is near, and yet, here we are. And I would submit that it is a time possibly not much unlike other times. And to paraphrase Charles Dickens, it is the best of times of all humankind and the worst of times. Interesting times. And interesting times. Yes, believe me when I say all is not lost. There have been times like this before, and the question or questions that transcend time and so much of our existence is, what does this all mean? Why am I here? For what purpose do I exist? How should I live? It is true, these questions have been pondered by some of the greatest minds of all humankind. The formal study of philosophy began with the Greeks around 6th century BCE, when men began to investigate and generally wonder what their purpose on earth actually was. Today, over 27 centuries have advanced, and we may have no clearer or better answers for our existence or how we should live than what was determined when these questions were first contemplated. Stoicism is a school of philosophy that began in the early 3rd century BCE. Like me, you may consider yourself to be a bit of a Stoic and emotionally grounded. My familiarity with Stoicism was fairly limited to the writings of Marcus Aurelius and the ideas and quips of maintaining a stiff upper lip. And that does not kill us, makes us stronger. And pain is weakness leaving the body. I believe that by abiding by these things was being stoic, and to a degree that remains true. Being stoic does require a degree of mental toughness. What I learned in studying the subject has opened my eyes and helped me appreciate Stoicism to be much more than the personal trait of emotional detachment. In actuality, being stoic is being aware and comfortable with your emotions, possessing emotional maturity and an emotional intelligence. Stoicism is a state of mind, but also more accurately, a way of life. Stoicism is to be practiced and applied. Stoicism is egalitarian and adaptable to individual circumstances, but also communal and encouraging of fellowship. At its core, Stoicism recognizes that life is somewhat unpredictable and indifferent, and that many of the things that happen to us lie outside our control. And to fixate and focus our attention on those things outside our control is useless. What we do control is how we react and how we react to what happens. Stoicism encourages us to derive our worth and happiness from those things internal. There are 4 main principles, or I should say there are 4 main virtues of Stoicism: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. Act always with courage. Act always with temperance and moderation. Always seek justice and fairness, and always seek and practice wisdom. Always, always, always. Wisdom, the ability to determine what is within our control. Wisdom, the ability to determine what is within our control and internal, and what is outside of our control and external. I'm reminded of the Serenity Prayer, written by American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, and made popular by Alcoholics Anonymous. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Courage to persist and resist. Temperance, the ability to live in moderation and avoid excesses of materialism and consumption. Justice, be good to one another, help one another, the golden rule. Some of the ancient Stoics that I became more familiar with as I studied this topic, Zeno of Citium. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more and we should say less. Zeno of Citium founded the Stoic school of philosophy in the 3rd century BCE. There are no existing publications today of his teachings, but Stoicism survived thanks to the publications of the pupils of Zeno. And before, Stoicism kind of gave way to Christianity. Seneca lived from 4 BCE to 65 CE. Perhaps the most famous among the Stoic philosophers is Seneca. Seneca was a senator and a playwright and the unfortunate counselor of Nero. He embodied the complexities and contradictions and conflicts that make up our human nature. Despite his flaws, his teachings encourage us to live a moral life of meaning and to avoid being overly seduced by our desires and attachments. Seneca was a well-known Roman writer and educator who, upon returning to Rome after a decade of being exiled, became the tutor of Nero, who would go on to become one of history's most notorious leaders of state. Nero would eventually order Seneca to take his own life, believing that he was part of a plot to kill him. Nero was not the first person to attempt to kill Seneca. He was, I guess, not a well-liked guy. Seneca had become a great orator, philosopher, and dramatist with public speaking skills, and a brilliance that was not matched by many. And when Caligula became the emperor of Rome in AD 37, he tried to have Seneca killed as he was extremely jealous of Seneca's intelligence. Fortunately for Seneca, Caligula was assassinated. And I don't think Seneca was around at the time. And Seneca went on to be Nero's tutor. So why did Seneca cause so much loathing amongst the elite? Seneca's life was tragic. He was forced to kill himself by Nero, his student at the time. Rome's ruling factions continually criticized his work and much of his efforts. He ended up being banished for a number of years and even had to give away his fortune, although he was always attempting to do good and bring insight to the Roman Empire. Yet, in spite of these misfortunes, he knew that there were things he could control and some areas that he could just not control. He didn't lose too much sleep worrying about the areas that he couldn't control, and instead focused his attention on those areas that he could have influence and impact. Seneca's writings also reveal to us that nothing significant has changed in human nature in more than 2,000 years since his time. His teachings remain contemporary. Vanity, greed, ambition, conspicuous consumption, and the pursuit of comfort. Seneca observed all these things during his time, and they are still much with us today. Epictetus. I knew I was going to struggle how to say it. We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from the judgments we form about them. He was born into slavery, and his true name is unknown, as is his actual date of birth and death. In Greek, the word epictetus actually means acquired. Like I say, he was born into slavery. He was considered a property. Again, as in the case of Zeno, there are no published work for Epictetus. But after gaining his freedom, he founded the school of philosophy. Most of what is known of Epictetus' teachings was published by his pupils, Arian in the Discourses. James Stockdale credits Epictetus for helping him endure 7.5 years as a prisoner of war while serving in Vietnam. Encouraged under fire, testing Epictetus' doctrines in a laboratory of human behavior, Stockdale concludes the book quoting Epictetus. The emotions of grief, pity, and even affection are well-known disturbers of the soul. Grief is the most offensive. Epictetus considered the suffering of grief an act of evil. It is a willful act going against the will of God to have all men share happiness. Marcus Aurelius, 121 to 180 CE. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor from 161 to 180 and is one of the most important Stoic philosophers. What today we call the Meditations take the form of a personal notebook which wasn't intended to be published. Aurelius called them writings to myself. They were written in Greek, although his native tongue was Latin, and were probably composed while he was on military campaigns in Central Europe around 171, 175 AD. Today it is widely regarded as one of the most important works of all Western literature. He died most likely from plague or cancer while on military campaign in present-day Austria and Central Europe. The work is divided into 12 short books, and I'll just briefly go through each book. In book 1, Aurelius thanks those to whom he is indebted. He thanks his grandfather. He thanks his grandfather for teaching him to be candid, modest, and even-tempered. His father for teaching him to be humble, calm, and frugal. His mother for teaching him to be generous and non-materialistic. And his teachers who taught him the value of hard work, self-discipline, equanimity, rationality, humor, and tolerance. From his teachers, he also learned to love practical philosophy instead of metaphysics, logic, and the vanity of the sophists. He also thanks his wife for being affectionate and practical. In book 2, Aurelius reminds us that each day we will meet some terrible people. But we have our faults too. So we shouldn't be too angry with them, for we are all just bits of blood, bones, and breath. Our life is fleeting. Our bodies will decay. As for death, it is nothing to fear. It can't hurt us. But what is most important about us is our minds. We shouldn't let them be slaves to selfish passions, quarrel with fate, or be anxious about the present or afraid of the future. We can't guarantee fame or fortune, but we can keep our minds calm and free from injury, a state superior to both pleasure and pain. Freedom is the control of our minds. Book 3, Aurelius tells us to be mindful of little things, like cracks in a loaf of bread, the texture of figs and olives, and the expressions of wild animals. Even mundane things have charm, he says. But we shouldn't gossip or speculate about what others say or do. Instead, think and talk about things you would not be ashamed of if they were found out. Think and talk with sincerity and cheerfulness, and there will be a kind of divinity within you. There is nothing more valuable than a mind pursuing truth, justice, temperance, fortitude, rationality, and the like. So be resolute in pursuit of the good. Book 4. Aurelius tells us that we can always find solitude in our own minds. If our minds are serene, we will find peace and happiness. As for how others view us, we have little control over this. But virtue is still virtue, even if it isn't acknowledged. Remember, our lives are ephemeral. One day we live, the next day we're dead. So act virtuous, use your time well, and be cheerful. Then, when you drop from the life's tree, you will drop like a ripe fruit. Book 5. Aurelius tells us we should live in accordance with our nature, and that we should get up each morning and do good work, because to do good work is our nature. We should act naturally and contribute to society, unconcerned about the reproach of others, and don't ask or expect payment or gratitude for doing good. Instead, be satisfied with being like a vine that bears good fruit. Virtue is its own reward. Book 6, Aurelius disavows revenge. Better not to imitate injury. We should do our duty, act righteously, and not be disturbed by the rest. For in the vastness of space and time, we are insignificant. Think of good things and control your mind. Book 7. Aurelius advocates patience and tolerance. Nature works like a wax, continually transforming, so be patient. People will speak ill of you no matter what you do, but be tolerant. Evil people will try your patience and tolerance, but we can remain happy by controlling our response to them. Book 8. Aurelius argues that being disconnected from humanity is like being cut off, or like cutting off one of your own limbs. Instead, live connected to nature and other people. No matter what you encounter, maintain a moderate and controlled mind. If you are cursed by others, don't let it affect you any more than your cursing the spring's affects the springtime. Books 9 through 11, Aurelius argues that we should be moderate, sincere, honest, and calm. If someone reports that you are not virtuous, dispel such notions with the probity and use humor to disarm the worst people. Book 12, Aurelius asks why we love ourselves best, but so often value the opinion of others over our own. This is a mistake. Remember, too, that the destiny of the greatest and worst of human beings is the same. We all return to ashes. Do not then be proud, but be humble. Die in serenity, as Aurelius wrote from his tent, far from home and never to return. Life is warfare, and a stranger's sojourn. After fame, oblivion. Some more contemporary Stoics, Viktor Frankl, 1905 to 1997. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, philosopher, author, and Holocaust survivor. He was the founder of logotherapy. Nelson Mandela, 1918 to 2013. Nelson Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary and political leader, and first president of South Africa. He was imprisoned for 27 years, spending much of that time in solitary confinement at the infamous Robben Island prison. Mandela committed his life work to ending the legacy of apartheid and fostering racial reconciliation. Modern Stoicism continues to survive the test of time to this day. It provides a foundation for cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, founded by an American psychologist, Dr. Albert Ellis. CBT works to help individuals examine their beliefs and challenge and replace negative and irrational beliefs to help them manage stress and anxiety. Before I close, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize the situation in Ukraine, and President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine are providing a necessary and timely example to the U.S. and the entire world, an example of stoicism and courageous resolve. in the defense of their homeland. In closing, I want to share the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twist it by knaves and make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them back up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowns and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I'm also reminded, almost done with this, I'm also reminded of the words by Edward R. Murrow. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason. If we dig deep into our own history and our doctrine and remember we are not descended from fearful men, not men who feared to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes which were, for the moment, unpopular. Both Rudyard Kipling's and Edward R. Murrow's words stand on their own. To me, they embody and speak to Stoicism. And with that, I'm done with my presentation.